everyone, welcome back to the Card Combo Show, episode 93, I believe. And I'm unshaved, it's my little chin. It's awful, I hate it, but here we are. And this week, I will be looking at Yaag Rosch from Opus 7, Hurdy from Opus 17, Glauca from Opus 11, Morrow from Opus 16, and finally Prishe from Opus 14. Yaag Rosch, a 1 CP water backup with the text, when Yaag Rosch enters the field, choose one backup other than Yaag Rosch you control, return it to its owner's hand. So an interesting ability. They're both similar and different to something like Neon, but yeah, not bad. So Dorgan, something like Dorgan's quite fun because when a backup enters your field, choose one before dependent controls, remove from the game for as long as Dorgan is on the field. So you can play Yaag Rosch, remove something with Dorgan, which bounces a backup, play that backup to then remove another forward. Now you used to be able to bounce Yaag Rosch and Mion infinitely, so just keep on, as long as you can pay for them both, Yaag Rosch, Mion, Yaag Rosch, Mion, Yaag Rosch, and just keep on removing with Dorgan. But it can't do it anymore because Mion's been banned. But it's still very feasible, plausible, whatever, and kind of fun. Tiamat. So when Tiamat attacks, choose one character you control, may return to its owner's hand. So you can attack with Tiamat and bounce Yaag Rosch back to your hand, which you can then play to then bounce something else back to hand. Now, obviously, if you attack with Tiamat, you could just bounce the thing that Yaag Rosch is bouncing. But it might be a case of playing backups as getting you something. So, for example, in Wind, you've got things like Rosa and I've forgotten the card's name. The monster, not Typhon, Atomos. Thank you. I don't know. What I'm saying thank you to. Thank you to my own brain. Whereby you get CP back for playing things. And Yaag Rosch is 1 CP, so maybe that additional CP from the Atomos makes a difference. I don't know. But either way, obviously you've got to actually have the value in bouncing Yaag Rosch and then replay the Yaag Rosch, because otherwise you might as well just bounce the thing with Tiamat that Yaag Rosch is bouncing. Bismarck. So choose one character you control, return to its owner's hand. So it might be a case you play Yaag Rosch, try and bounce them back to your hand. Your opponent then goes to cancel it or do something to maybe interfere with that. Maybe they want to break the backup. You can then cast Bismarck to make sure that you get that character back to your hand. Again, you could also just use Bismarck to bounce Yaag Rosch to then play Yaag Rosch and bounce the other backup. Again, you need to make sure that there's actually value in doing that though, otherwise you might as well just bounce the actual thing you want bounced. Sid 2. Dull, search one backup across one and add to your hand. All the worst thing in the world, fits with the theme of the rest of the cards so far, so yeah, could work. Using, again, something like Dorgan, or Typhon, or Bismarck, or Leviathan. Jill Nabat. So, this is kind of a stupid but kind of funny one. So, for each job Psychon, or when she enters the field, select one of the two. For each job Psychon you control, your opponent discards one card from his or her hand. Or you can deal 4,000 damage to all the Dolph Woods opponent controls. So with Yaag Rosch on the field, use a Psychon and Jill Nabat. You play Jill Nabat onto the field, and you get to make your opponent discard 2 cards, which out of the blue is kind of nasty. But if you then played Yaag Rosch to then play Jill Nabat back to hand, and then play her again, and then make your opponent discard 2 cards, that's even worse because you've already made discard once from Jill Nabat. You could also run the Bart's, which has all the jobs, sorry. So you play Jill Nabat, and now your opponent has to discard 3 cards, which is pretty gnarly. Or you could cast, let's say you've got a few forwards on the field, Hashmal, which gives all your forwards a job, so Psychon, and then you play Jill Nabat, and then your opponent discards like, I don't know, 5 cards. Hilda, so a really good effect on re-entry, and the reason I'm saying Yaag Rosch with this and Hilda is because, yes, you have other means of bouncing Wind, like Althea and Typhon. Not Typhon. Oh, they're all so similar in names, I can't remember their names. The one I just talked about. Welcome to Baby Brain. Anyway, yeah, so being able to replay Hilda back onto the field for the damage 5 is really nice. Sometimes it kind of sucks when you have to play Hilda, but you get the draw card, which is fine. But then when you're maybe late game and things aren't going great, you can play Yaag Rosch and then bounce Hilda back to your hand, then play Hilda, draw a card, and then get to play a forward of 3 or less back onto the field. RG, a bit of argy-bargy. So when he enters, when he's put from the field to the break zone, select 1 3, including choose one backup across one in break zone, play it onto the field. So RG dies, you can then play Yaag Rosch, even if you have 5 backups. RG is put into the break zone, at which point you can make the selection. You can then choose the 1, bring Yaag Rosch onto the field to then bounce something else back to your hand, which might be more beneficial because maybe it's a case of you've got a really good backup that has good entry effect, so maybe the 8 CP XDef, I can't remember names today, Jesus Christ. And it could also just be your own mono lightning, but you have this off-color Yaag Rosch just when RG does break through something like, let's say, Kane. You can then play Yaag Rosch and bounce something back to your hand, which is really worth it. Kimari, yeah. Kimari gives something a counter, play Yaag Rosch to bounce Kimari back to hand, play it again to then give another thing a counter, and both gain the effect of don't take damage from summons or abilities. Chadley, when Chadley uses all his counters, play Yaag Rosch, bounce Chadley back to your hand, play Chadley again, gets his counters back. It's still fairly costly because you've played Chadley twice, but I can't underestimate how effective Chadley is, to be honest. Being able to just dull and get any backup from your, any forward from your break zone at any point he has counters, very useful. XF, yeah, I already mentioned it before, using something like RG with this, but XF has a fantastic ability to be able to break any forward, gets around most things like Thanos, and he gets to play something onto the field, and then be able to Yaag Rosch him back to hand to then replay it. It's really good. Obviously, you could run something like Shantoto as well, not in water lightning, but you know what I'm saying. Be able to get rid of those big sweeps is really useful, and be able to bounce him back to hand with Yaag Rosch, again, super useful. Sarah, so when she enters the field, if you control 2 or more ISIS characters other than Sarah, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand, and when Sarah enters the field, if you control a category 13 character of an element other than ice, draw 1 card. So Yaag Rosch is a nice way just to be able to fulfill that last bit. Hurdy. So, a really cool card. 2 CP ice backup. Dull, put Hurdy into the break zone, choose 1 forward, dull it, freeze it, pay 1 fire, 1 ice, and dull, put Hurdy into the break zone. Play 1 fire or ice forward, cost 5 or less from your hand onto the field. Really, really strong ability. To be able to just pay 3 effectively and play anything of 5 CP in ice or fire at any point is really good, especially during your opponent's attack phase. There's so many good cards that you can do stuff with it. Obviously I'm not going to look at all of them, but some of my favorites are something like Sabin. So this is a stupid one, not great, but I still like it. So let's say your opponent's got to their main phase 2, they're about to pass their turn. You can then use Hurdy to play Sabin onto the field. Sabin's effect or trigger of when he enters the field Sabin gains at the beginning of your main phase 1 during each of your turns. Choose 1 forward opponent controls, deal it 9,000 damage until the end of your turn. Now, if you consider the fact that you've paid a fire and ice and broken a backup to play a 9 CP forward, that's fine. But also, this is at your opponent's end of their turn, so they haven't considered the fact they might have to kill something like Sabin, because if they still pass their turn with Sabin on the field, you now get to nuke something for 9 as well. So actually, that's not too bad. You still gain a pretty hefty forward, but you're also going to get to deal 9k something. Vayne. I've had this done to me and it ain't fun. So maybe you go to pass your turn, or your opponent goes to pass their turn, play Vayne onto the field. Now they have to pay 1 for all their forwards, otherwise they will break. And that's definitely something they won't have considered. And again, just a really, really great way to be able to just play something onto the field when your opponent isn't expecting it. And that just completely screws their efficiency, because they've got all their backups they need to pay, or they need to be able to pay with their backups. Probably with their backups, to keep their forwards alive, because otherwise they're discarding out of hand to keep their forwards, which you can read Vayne as discard as many cards as forwards you have, which again is pretty good. Sarah, when she enters the field, you may search for 1 drop Moogle to your hand, and when she attacks all the Moogle you control, reactivate all your... Oh, I can't speak, sorry. Activate all the Moogle you control, and then discard 1 drop Moogle, choose 1 forward, dull it. So you could use this, maybe your opponent goes to attack phase, play Sarah onto the field, and then search yourself for Moogle, and then discard that Moogle immediately to make it so your opponent's forward goes dull, that would attack, to maybe avoid some horrible attack effect. Or just have it, again, at your opponent's main phase 2 end, you play Sarah onto the field, you get a Moogle to hand, and then when you get to your turn, Sarah's been on the field a turn, so she can then attack and reactivate all the Moogles you might have, including something like Hurdy. Obviously, Hurdy will have broken because, you know, Sarah, but you can actually search another Hurdy with Sarah to then replace that, so not too bad. Yes, I hate this card, but fantastic. Now, obviously, it is a lightning forward, but that doesn't matter because it still fulfills the requirement of being a fire forward. So, yeah, play Gesso onto the field when your opponent isn't expecting it, to then choose 1 forward your opponent's hand, remove it from the game. Ugh, that's grim. Especially if it's like ice fire. I mean, your opponent's going to be expecting some form of discard, sure, but something like that where she moves it from the game as well is disgusting. I really like it. Edgar, yeah, so play Edgar onto the field to get back some ability, or get back to 6 characters to your hand, and then the following turn you've got Edgar there ready to use his ability to use S's, but just ultimately maybe your opponent attacks for some forwards, you block with a few of them, they die, your opponent goes to end turn, play Edgar onto the field to get those forwards back to hand, ready for you to play on your following turn. Xenos. So when Xenos enters the field, you may play 1 character 4 or less from your hand. So Hurdy into Xenos into something else. I mean, enough said, really. General Leo. This is quite a funny one. So maybe you can foresee that your opponent is going to cast a summon, and it's something you really don't want. So maybe I don't know, they've played Terror onto the field to get back a summon from their break zone. You can then, in response to that, use Hurdy to play General Leo onto the field to then make it so they can't cast any summons. You can't cast any summons either, but hopefully you've kind of considered that when you played this card. Just bear in mind the fact that now all your forwards have to block. So if you do this during attack phase, General Leo, if he's the only upright forward, will have to block and might die. So yeah, just consider that. Zeramus. So again, your opponent tries to end their turn. You play Zeramus onto the field. Now all their active forwards will go dull unless they can kill Zeramus. Jet Bahamut. When Jet Bahamut enters the field, choose one forward, deal 5k damage. If it's put from the field to the break zone this turn, remove from the game instead. Not too bad, but damage 3 when Jet Bahamut enters the field. Choose one card named Garnet Bahamut or Amber Bahamut in the break zone, play it onto the field. So being able to play Jet Bahamut to then play a forward from your break zone back onto the field, one of which increases the damage Jet Bahamut does, which means he'll then do 8k to something, which will then remove from the game. Again, something your opponent may not consider. Really good if maybe your opponent's got a couple of forwards they're attacking with. They attack with one, that pushes you to 3. They attack with the second, you can then use Jet Bahamut to bring Amber Bahamut, Garnet Bahamut, I can't remember which one it is, to then maybe kill that attacking forward, or kill the forward that's already attacked, and then block with the other one, because that will also increase the damage that Jet Bahamut does on blocking as well. Bartandless. Again, another end phase trick. So at the end of each of your opponent's turns, dull and freeze all the active backups your opponent controls. So maybe your opponent can foresee something that you're maybe going to do, so they want to leave themselves some backups open. They try to pass their turn. You then not flicker in, but you then tech in Barthandless. Now if they don't use those backups, they're dull and froze. Right, Glauca. 2 CP, 5k lightning forward. The cost required to play your lightning forwards onto the field is reduced by 1. It cannot become 0. That's very important. When Glauca or forward enters your field, choose one forward. It gains plus 1,000 power until the end of the turn. So you need to be careful of the cannot become 0 effect. If you have another card which makes it so that other cards can become 0, Glauca will stop them from becoming 0, because that stipulation is there and will affect the card. So Talika, a great card. So dull, the cost required to play your characters onto the field this turn is reduced by 1. It cannot become 0, and you can only use ability once per turn. But yeah, having Glauca and Talika making so your lightning forwards now cost 2 less is pretty strong. Regis. So the cost required to cast your job Kingsglaive is reduced by 1, and this is what I was talking about. So let's say you have I don't think there actually are any 2 CP Kingsglaive, or Kingsglaive forwards, but actually, no, there's a good example, and that is the 1 CP Tread. So Regis could make him become 0, but with Glauca on the field, that stops your lightning forwards from being reduced to 0. So even though you've got Regis, Tread cannot become 0, so he isn't a free card anymore. So you need to be mindful of that if you're running these 2 cards together, which I have seen done before. But on the flip side, it means that you do get to play things like Libertas for like 3 CP or Nyx for 2. So yeah, it's still really good for them to work together. Just bear in mind that even though Regis can allow them to become 0, Glauca stops that entirely. Hooded Man. So reducing Hooded Man's cost, but then also potentially getting all your backups activated as well. Just really nice. Ramza. So the cost required to play Ramza on the field is reduced by 1 for each forward you control. With Glauca on the field, it means it's reduced by 2. So Ramza now becomes a only 4 CP, 7k. 7k isn't fantastic, but he does also gain the +1 from Glauca, so technically he becomes an 8k, but you probably want a couple of forwards on the field just to really maximize Ramza's effect, and try to get Ramza to 10,000 power so he gains haste and can break something when he attacks. Ravus. So Glauca is a job captain, so when he dies, Ravus's cost will be reduced by 4, which means that Ravus can then be played into the field for 1. So maybe you attack with Glauca, your opponent's like, I'm going to relish a chance to get rid of Glauca. Block him, Glauca dies, play Ravus, and then you get to choose a forward. It loses 5,000 power, which with Glauca's attack damage means that would have been a total of 10, which is not bad, not too bad. Zac, if you control a 7 character of an element other than lightning, the cost required to cast Zac is reduced by 2, so make it so his cost can be reduced by 3. Not too bad. And the fact he also gets to play a 7 character as well when he dies is not too bad. Libertas, as I mentioned before. So yeah, his cost can be reduced by 2 in total if you have both Regis and Glauca on the field, but then if you have a Nyx in the break zone, and add it to your hand, you get to activate 2 backups as well, so it means that Libertas is really only costing 1. Lady Lilith. So this is more just about being able to fund Lady Lilith's ability. Which, yeah, just being able to make it so your lightning forwards are a little bit cheaper, playing them onto the field, being able to remove them to gain crystals, to then use Lilith's ability to break forwards as well is quite useful. And Braska and Seymour. So Braska reduces the cost of your summoners by 1, can't become 0, but that would mean that Seymour only costs you 2 CP, which is really good for a 7k forward, which is probably going to break a forward. And if you also have the means of giving Seymour haste and you have 6 summons in your break zone, give Seymour haste, dull him, deal your opponent point of damage as well. Not bad. Alright, Morrow. This card's seen a fair amount of play recently, and it's pretty good, to be honest. There's a 3 CP 6k haste. The forwards you control can form a party with forwards of any element. When Morrow forms a party and attacks, discard 1 card from your hand. If you do so, draw 2 cards. That is mandatory. If you party attack with Morrow, you must discard a card and draw 2. So bear that in mind, because I've seen some people that don't realise that. And then damage 5 when Morrow attacks. When Morrow forms a party, and attacks, Morrow deals your opponent 1 point of damage. Nasty. So Sellers, yeah, I've seen this played quite a bit. You party attack with Sellers and Morrow. You can stack it so Sellers would get you a 6 character out of the break zone to your hand. You can then use that to fund Morrow's discard draw 2. So actually, you have got 1, put it back, drawn 2. So just draw 2. Really, really good. And then, yeah, obviously, Morrow makes it so all your characters, all your forwards, can party attack with any element, and Sellers, you might have lots of 6 characters together, so there's both fire, ice, there aren't really any others in any other elements, to be honest. So, yeah, just being able to have it so that those 2 elements can mix and party attack together, really good. Noctis, party take bonanza, oh my god, I just can't speak anymore. Yeah, being able to party attack, do lots of horrible things with Morrow and Noctis and other cards, and yeah, and making it so all the forwards can party attack together, really good. Lice. So when a party you control deals damage to your opponent, draw 1 card. Lice deals your opponent 1 point of damage. This effect will trigger only once per turn. So this is a bit of a weird one, because Morrow would party attack, let's say, with Lice, because they can party attack because of Morrow's effect. At damage 5, you deal a point of damage to your opponent. There's been a ruling in the past. Now this is, I may be proven wrong on this, because I'm not 100% sure on the ruling, because there have been different rulings in the past. But basically, Morrow party attacking with Lice technically, I think, means that Morrow, even though Morrow's ability is the one dealing damage to your opponent, it's technically the party dealing damage, which I think means Lice's effect will then trigger because the party is out damaged. You then get to draw a card, and then you get to deal another point of damage. I might be wrong, so just ignore this completely if that's the case. Regardless, these 2 cards obviously are really good together because of the fact that they both focus on party attacking. If a forward forming a party controls dealt damage, the damage comes 0 instead. So Morrow party attacking with anything else means that they take less damage. Damage 5 gets to deal opponent damage, and then if they aren't taking damage, it means your opponent blocks those forwards, or your opponent's forward will die, yours won't. So they're probably not going to block it, deal opponent damage, which then gives Lice the ability to then deal more damage. So 3 points of damage with 1 attack. Not too bad. Like I said, take that first bit with a pinch of salt though, because I'm not entirely sure on the exact ruling yet, because there's been a little bit of grey area there. I know there's been some discussions on Twitter about it, but either way, still 2 really good cards together. Black Chocobo. If Black Chocobo forms a party, that party cannot be blocked. So yeah, damage 5, Morrow and Black Chocobo. Not too bad. Biggs. So, if you control a Job Avalanche operative, the cost required to cast Biggs is reduced by 2. When 2 or more Job Avalanche operative forwards you control from a party and attack, draw 1 card. All the forwards in that party gain this forward cannot be broken until the end of the turn. So you get to, let's say Morrow, Biggs, and Wedge are all partying together. You get to, I can't remember what Wedge's effect is now, but really I care mostly about Biggs, because you get to attack with Biggs. Now, Morrow, Biggs, and Wedge are all unbreakable, which is really good. You get to discard 1 card and then draw 2 cards. But you also get to draw a card with Biggs. So you stack it so Biggs draws the card first. If it's a card you don't want, you can then use that to fund Morrow's discard to then draw 2 more cards. Be careful, because you're milling yourself 3 cards at that point, but it's still pretty good. And then, yeah, again, you've got a massive party of forwards that your opponent isn't going to want to block, because if they block it, their forwards will die. And again, Lice, really good with this. To be honest, Fire, Earth, 7 party attacks with Morrow, Lice, Biggs, wedge all those guys together, and Elf, the new Avalanche operative as well. I think it was Elf. Just, yeah, lots of fun there to be had. Jalinka, make it so Morrow can attack twice, so if you hit 5 points of damage, he can trigger his ability twice, provided he doesn't die. Nice. Behemoth K. So, when Behemoth K is chosen by your forward's ability, break that forward. When Behemoth K attacks, Behemoth K gains plus 3,000 power until the end of the turn, and Behemoth K deals your opponent 1 point of damage. So, if you're at damage 5, Morrow, Behemoth K, party attacking, that's 2 points of damage straight off the bat, just that alone. If your opponent blocks, I mean, they are going to get the damage 5 from Behemoth K, because you've already triggered Morrow's effect, which means you're at damage 5. So Behemoth K gains haste, and when Behemoth K is blocked, Behemoth K deals your opponent 1 point of damage. So 3 points of damage with Behemoth K and Morrow alone. Oh my god, that's just brutal. Not to mention the fact that they're also, I mean, Morrow isn't huge, so if your opponent does block it, they're going to probably try and kill Morrow. But still, Behemoth K will be a 12k forward. So their blocking forward is pretty dead. Yeah, hilarious stuff. Finally, we have Prishe. So, a 4 CP Wind Earth 9k forward with the text, if you cast Prishe, you may pay an extra Wind, Earth, and Colorless. When Prishe enters the field, you may pay the extra cost, or if you pay the extra cost, sorry, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Play up to one Wind character or Earth character of cost 5 or less among them onto the field, and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order at damage 3. Prishe gains plus 1,000 power and Brave. So, cards like Prishe, so you've got the old school, I think it's Opus 11 Fiend, I think she's Opus 11 anyway. Can't think of any others off the top of my head now. But where they have that additional cost, that is paid when you cast Prishe. So it is basically saying increase Prishe's cost by this much, and you have to pay these elements for this effect to trigger. It's not a case of she enters the field, then you pay the cost. It is all self-contained. Her cost is increased by that, and you have to pay those elements. But yeah. So Shantoto, let's say you play Prishe, you reveal Shantoto, you play Shantoto onto the field, she can produce Wind Sippy, which is quite nice because you're in Wind Earth. But then when Shantoto enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, add 1 Wind character and up to 1 Wind Earth character. 1 Wind Earth, 1 Earth character. Among them to your hand, and return the other cards to the bottom of the deck in any order. So hopefully you get to play Prishe, to play Shantoto, to get 2 cards to hand, which is pretty efficient. Cecil, Prishe into Cecil into something else from your hand if it's a 4 character, to then reactivate 2 backups. Nice. 2 big forwards as well, with a nice form protection with Cecil. Luminous Puma. So yeah, it's just a character that Prishe reveals. So Luminous Puma can be played onto the field to then get you something back from your break zone, and then again you can put Luminous Puma into the break zone to then get you another card back to hand. Fahitu. So less about playing him onto the field, but more about his dull and break. Put Fahitu into the break zone, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 card among them on top of your deck, and the other card to the bottom of your deck. So you have to put 1 to the bottom. That's the only fall down here. But you get to remove something, because that's Fahitu's other effect, but ultimately you get to check the top 2 cards of your deck and make sure that Prishe is going to play something decent. Typhon. So it might be a case of you already have Prishe in hand, you play Typhon to choose one of your own forwards to put that on top of your deck. Actually, if you have 3 wind backups, you can play Typhon onto the field, then choose your own Typhon, to then play Prishe, to then replay Typhon. Stupid, because what's the point? But, sorry. But you play Typhon to then choose a forward that you control that has a really good entry ability, then put it the 4th card under your deck. Then the following turn, you'll have drawn 2 cards, provided you haven't milled yourself anymore and haven't taken any damage. You then play Prishe the following turn, because you could play Typhon and then that forward, but that other forward would have to have a really, really good effect for you to do both in one go, because Prishe is effectively a 7k or 7 CP at this point, and then Typhon as well, so probably not the best. But yeah, be able to play Typhon one turn to put one of your own forwards back into the deck, and then the following turn play Prishe to then replay that forward onto the field is, depending on the forward, really good. Just bear in mind that the character that Prishe plays has to be of cost 5 or less, so no replaying something like Yasmet, unfortunately. And there we go, folks. That is this week's done, and I didn't realise quite how close we were getting to Opus 18 now. We haven't seen any spoilers yet, but hopefully there'll be some good stuff. I forgot what the name of it is now, but I think there'll be a little bit more 7 stuff in there. We have another starter set coming out soon as well, so lots of good stuff. They're actually pumping out quite a bit now. Or is it? No, it's not a 7 starter set. Sorry, is it? There's a 7 boss deck, and then there's the Arden Noctis dual deck, which will be quite fun as well, because 15 has some really good cards. Provided it doesn't give too much to Kingslave, because I'm a little sick of Kingslave, if I'm perfectly honest. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this week's combos. Sorry about the weird thing on the lice, because I might be wrong with that effect. I just realised these are wrong. Oh well, maybe I'll edit it afterwards, at which point it'll look right to you, but it looks wrong to me right now, because I've still got Garland, Quan, Durando, and Princess Sarah from last week. Silly me. Oh well, that's what you get. See you later, folks.